The office is so powerful that you need God even more.
This week on Christian World News, one-on-one with President Donald Trump. Hear his plans for Israel, helping persecuted Christians, and how the job is making him lean more on God.
Plus, they're young, they're passionate, and they're unafraid. See how the next generation of Christians is living the gospel in Central Asia.
And they're coming to America for a college education, but they're learning about Jesus. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. I'll tell you what, that soundbite we just heard
Powerful.
from President Trump, powerful.
Sure is.
We haven't heard that in a while. Well, President Donald Trump is proving to be a fierce defender of religious liberty, and he's talking openly about the importance of spirituality and faith. White House correspondent Jennifer Wishon reports.
I was sworn in on the very Bible from which my mother would teach us as young children. And that faith lives on in my heart every single day.
Personal remarks from the nation's 45th president about his Christian faith.
What I hear most often as I travel the country are 5 words that never, ever fail to touch my heart. That's, I am praying for you.
He told thousands gathered for the annual National Prayer Breakfast that money isn't what defines success.
So easily we forget this, that the quality of our lives is not defined by our material success, but by our spiritual success. I will tell you that, and I tell you that from somebody that has had material success.
And he says Americans' freedoms come from God, not man.
Among those freedoms is the right to worship according to our own beliefs. That is why I will get rid of and totally destroy the Johnson Amendment and allow our representatives of faith to speak freely and without fear of retribution. I will do that, remember.
The Johnson Amendment is a tax regulation that prevents nonprofit organizations, including churches, from supporting or opposing political candidates of their choice. Many see it as limiting their free speech. President Trump renewed his promise to protect religious liberty both in America and abroad, a freedom he says is under threat now more than ever.
My administration will do everything in its power to defend and protect religious liberty in our land.
Some Americans see religious liberty as code for discrimination. Can you kind of give us a sense of how the president views this tension?
We have freedom of religion in this country, and I think people should be able to practice their religion, express areas of their faith without reprisal. And I think that pendulum sometimes swings the other way in the name of political correctness. And I think the president and the vice president both understand that one of the things that makes our country and this democracy so great is our ability to express our religion, to believe in faith, to express it, and to live by it. And that's where I think the important part is, whether it's a small business owner or an employee who wants to have some degree of expression of faith at the company. And too often those voices get pushed out in the name of political correctness.
The text of a possible executive order on religious liberty was leaked before the prayer breakfast, but Spicer says there are no immediate plans for any such executive actions.
We must never, ever stop asking God for the wisdom to serve the public according to his will.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. By the way, the president, as you know, has been in office for more than 2 weeks, and already he's opening up to CBN News about his plans. Recently, he sat down with our chief political correspondent, David Brody. They talked about the U.S.-Israel role, the role of faith in his life, and how he plans to help persecuted Christians. Take a look.
Mr. President, thank you for inviting CBN News here into the White House, the People's House. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, David.
Let me start. Well, by the way, do you like Mr. President or Mr. Trump?
You can call me anything you want.
I'll call you Mr.
You've
President.
known me a long time.
Let me ask you about the embassy in Israel.
Yes.
as it relates to moving this embassy to Jerusalem? Evangelicals, it's important for evangelicals. Are you committed to doing that?
Well, I'm looking at it. We're studying it. As you know, we discussed this before. We're studying it very, very long and hard. You know, it's a very big decision because every president for the last number of presidents, large number, they've come in and they were going to do it, and then all of a sudden they decide they don't want to get involved. It's a big, big decision, but we're studying the issue right now. I've always liked the concept of doing it. I will tell you that. I'll have a decision in the not too distant future.
Are the chances good?
Well, there's certainly a chance of it, absolutely. But we're doing very detailed studies on that, and we'll come out very soon. I hate to do that because that's not usually me, studies.
Right.
It's usually I do what's right. But this has two sides to it. It's not easy. And I'll make a decision over the not too distant future.
Let me switch gears, and it wouldn't be an interview between us if I didn't ask a God question, if you will. How has that spiritual journey been for you, especially being here and knowing the gravity of the office? Do you feel the need to pray more? Where are you on that?
Well, I tell you what, I've always felt the need to pray. So I would say that the office is so powerful that you need God even more because your decisions are no longer, gee, I'm going to build a building in New York or I'm going to do that. These are questions of massive life and death, even with regard to healthcare. We're working very hard on healthcare. But there you're talking about life and death, and you're talking about better lives, people living better because they have better healthcare at a lower price, which we're working very hard on. So yeah, you realize these decisions are all so important. There's almost not a decision that you make when you're sitting in this position that isn't a really life-altering position. So God comes into it even more so.
Persecuted Christians, we've talked about this overseas. Right. The refugee program or the refugee changes you're looking to make, as it relates to persecuted Christians, do you see them as kind of a priority here?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, they've been horribly treated. Do you know, if you were a Christian in Syria, it was impossible, at least very, very tough to get into the United States. If you were a Muslim, you could come in. But if you were a Christian, it was almost impossible. And the reason that was so unfair is that everybody was persecuted, in all fairness, but they were chopping off the heads of everybody, but more so the Christians. And I thought it was very, very unfair. So we are going to help them.
Mr. President, a pleasure. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
that was
David.
Great.
Well, that is just a portion of what the president had to say. To see the full interview, including his thoughts on the Muslim Brotherhood and religious freedom here in America, go to our website at cbnnews.com.
All right. Well, Syrian Christian refugees do have a harder time getting into the U.S. In the 2016 fiscal year, the U.S. accepted 12,587 Syrian refugees. Only 64 of them, or half of 1%, were Christian, even though about 10% of Syrians are Christians. The UN says fewer Christian refugees are applying for asylum. Christians say they are persecuted in the UN camps and don't want to live there, which cuts them off from the refugee process.
While many Christians are fleeing Syria to save their lives, some choose to stay. Barrel bombs have left the Syrian city of Aleppo in ashes, but a small, strong Christian community lives in the midst of that rubble. U.S. Congresswoman Tulsa Gabbard visited to ask them why. Their answer is a powerful message for Christians everywhere.
They bombed the church from down and exploded all. And they were happy on their websites, being proud to say that we destroyed a people who worship three gods. They think that as Christians we believe in three gods. We come here just to say that they thought that the church is the building, but the church was never the building. The church is the community. And we know that we are called to be the salt of the world and the light of the world.
Despite the suffering, the Evangelical Presbyterian Church of Aleppo says they will not stop filling their city with the gospel.
Well, coming up, they live in the dark shadow of Islamic extremism, yet they are unafraid to shine the light of Jesus Christ. Their story when we come back.
Years ago, my father had a great revelation. If Jesus was God, then everything he said was a law of the universe.
And it applies to everybody. It applies to Christians. It applies to non-Christians.
These spiritual laws were the foundation of his best-selling book, The Secret Kingdom.
In Pat Robertson's The Secret Kingdom, you'll learn how God's kingdom works, the principles that produce exceptional growth and development, the keys that build success in finances, health, relationships, and much more.
We have compiled those teachings on this DVD for you, as well as my teaching called The Law of Expectation, which was inspired by the laws of the Secret Kingdom.
What you expect the future to be, you can cause it to be just merely by the fact that you believe it.
Now for the first time in one DVD, The Secret Kingdom and the Law of Expectation.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. A Czechoslovakian Christian aid worker in Sudan has been sentenced to 20 years in prison. A Sudanese court found Peter Jacek guilty of spying and entering the country without a visa. The Czech government denies the charges. Jacek was arrested in 2015 for crossing illegally into the country's Kordofan state. That area has seen horrible violence in recent years.
Every day's daily air bombardment, destroying the school, even the facilities, health centers, churches, and everything.
The Czech government is trying to negotiate Jacek's release. Please keep him in prayer. Well, George, the spread of Islamic terrorism in 2016, making it, the worst year ever for Christian persecution, despite so much prayer.
Exactly. And here's another example. In the overwhelming Muslim region of Central Asia, the folks there face daily harassment for sharing the gospel. Despite the risk, young Christian professionals are not afraid to live out the message of Christ in their societies. I met with them on a recent visit to the nation of Kyrgyzstan and its capital city, Bishkek.
A Christian living in any of the 5 former Soviet republics of Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, or Turkmenistan can expect intimidation, harassment, or worse, jail time for telling others about their faith. Artur, not his real name, is from Uzbekistan.
I am called to be a witness for Christ, but that has been a dangerous calling.
Maxim lives in northern Tajikistan.
When the authorities discover someone has converted to Christianity, they will gather relatives, friends, and family of the accused and bring him or her before an Islamic council of elders. The convert then stands before the group and has to decide between faith or family.
25 years after the Soviet Union disappeared and these republics gained their independence, the 5 so-called Stan states have become repressive and hostile towards people of faith.
In recent years, Christians have come under intense pressure here in Central Asia. In fact, in an attempt to crack down on radical Islam, these 5 governments have enacted laws curbing their activities. But here's the problem. Instead of going after Muslims, these governments are using these laws to go after Christians.
Dr. Michael Cherenkov follows religious freedom issues in the former Soviet Union.
These laws have forced Christians to be more creative and invent new approaches to sharing the gospel.
Cherenkov says while churches and Christian organizations raise suspicion, individual relationships go virtually unnoticed.
We are discovering that being a witness for Christ in the workplace is probably the only safe and effective form of evangelization.
On a recent Saturday morning, hundreds of young Christians from across the region met for the first ever Next Generation Professional Leaders Initiative. The event was the brainchild and dream of Sergei Rakuba.
It is not possible to overstate the significance of the gathering.
He grew up in the former Soviet Union and remembers what it was like as a young Christian trying to discover his purpose in life.
I was not allowed to study in the universities because I was a Christian. And throughout the whole territory of the Soviet Union, you could not find even one Christian professor, Christian doctor, or Christian lawyer. Even the word business was a foreign word for Christians at that time.
Rakuba brought together entrepreneurs, doctors, educators, lawyers, and media experts to teach young professionals how to be effective witnesses for Christ in the marketplace.
This is a generation that didn't grow up in a secular and repressive Soviet mindset. So they have a unique perspective, unique gifts and talents that can bring transformation to their communities.
31-year-old Urmat works as an IT specialist from Kyrgyzstan.
While it's not always easy to talk openly about faith, I'm learning that my deeds should speak louder than my words and that building long-term relationships is vital.
17-year-old Miriam teaches English in Kazakhstan.
My parents and all my relatives are against me because I'm a Christian.
She says meeting others who have also endured much for their faith and still want to be used by God was a huge encouragement.
This gathering is also important because it's teaching us how to safely combine our profession with our passion for Christ.
Yevgeny is a media specialist.
To see a lot of young people who are really interested in being useful for God is inspiring to me. This has also been a wonderful opportunity to network with others.
Rakuba says it's up to these young professionals to instill biblical values into their societies. Only then will they see lasting change.
Even though Islam is the dominant religion and radical Islam is becoming more influential here, I am so blessed to witness the courage and confidence demonstrated by young Christians in Central Asia.
It's really cool because, in these societies, here in the U.S., you can go share the gospel with somebody over a cup of coffee.
Absolutely.
You don't, you're not afraid of somebody walking in and arresting you. Here, they have to be very careful.
Yeah.
It's long-term relationships, and yet they want to continue talking about Jesus Christ.
Great story.
Thank you.
God bless it. All right, well, up next, Chinese students are coming to America in pursuit of a college education, but many are finding much more than they bargained for.
These are principles for the whole world, just like the law of gravity. And so also with the principles of the kingdom of God. The kingdom has everything we want. It has healing, financial blessing, marital bliss, success in what we do, and more than anything, it has access to God Himself. How do we get there?
Get The Secret Kingdom and the Law of Expectation, available now.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
U.S. campus ministries are growing in popularity among international students. Many of them are overcoming the culture shock and finding comfort in Jesus. Mengfei Li explains.
Laughter, games, food, and fun. For Esther and Mark, Friday nights are about more than just eating a free dinner at church. They come for a special purpose. Thousands of Chinese students come to the United States for advanced education. Fresh off the boat, many are professed atheists, but some are finding Christ through campus ministries. According to InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, in 2015, more than 304,000 Chinese were enrolled in American colleges and universities. 12% of them accepted Christ. Regent University student Li Xiang struggled with culture shock after arriving in Virginia Beach.
Loneliness was totally unavoidable for me. No matter how hard I tried to keep myself busy, I just felt empty. Then, I was invited to a church dinner on Friday nights. It felt strange that the people there shared an amazing dinner with me and started to talk to me as friends and buddies.
CBN News joined some members of Agape Chinese Church. As they handed out tracts at a Washington, D.C. park, their main focus was to invite foreign students to church. Contemporary music is an important part of their outreach. Some people passed by at the park were deeply touched by their passionate performance for Jesus. Singer Jose Para welcomes the partnership with Chinese American Christians.
We have been praying for years to have a church, Chinese community on our side and, capable to communicate the gospel to them. So this year it has, we have that community church that is actually helping us to share the gospel with tourists that are coming from China. They speak only Chinese, straight Chinese.
Church leaders believe music is one way to bridge the gap with the foreign college students.
Many students told me they have never heard of this type of music. Although they don't know Jesus, they can sit there quietly to listen and feel the music. They love those songs.
Over time, the Christians established relationships with the students. As a result, they became more willing to discuss faith and the Bible. The students' lives changed because church members ministered to them and helped them understand the Christian faith.
I've never thought about the word sin. The more I read about it, the more questions I had. I even compared Christianity with other religions. When I got really confused, I tried to pray like other Christians do. I just felt God was next to me and church leaders began to explain more to me. The purpose of this ministry is to allow Chinese millennials to know Jesus. They're living in the U.S. and they will face trials and uncertainties. Our church provides help to them, and we want them to feel the same love that Jesus gave us all.
And share that love with others once they return home.
As a church, we want to use our resources to change the Chinese young people right here in the U.S. God gave us a mission to make disciples of all people, all races, and all nations.
Mengfei Li, CBN News, Manassas, Virginia.
Years ago, my father had a great revelation. If Jesus was God, then everything he said was a law of the universe.
And it applies to everybody. It applies to Christians. It applies to non-Christians.
These spiritual laws were the foundation of his best-selling book, The Secret Kingdom.
In Pat Robertson's The Secret Kingdom, you'll learn how God's kingdom works, the principles that produce exceptional growth and development, the keys that build success in finances, health, relationships, and much more.
We have compiled those teachings on this DVD for you, as well as my teaching called The Law of Expectation, which was inspired by the laws of the Secret Kingdom.
What you expect the future to be, you can cause it to be just merely by the fact that you believe it.
Now for the first time in one DVD, The Secret Kingdom and the Law of Expectation.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it, "I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday." At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
And finally on the broadcast this week, Israel's growing construction sites have uncovered some ancient treasures in some very unlikely places.
Yeah, CBN correspondent Julie Stahl shows us what archaeologists are finding.
Here in Israel's Central Plains, a building boom dots the skyline with cranes in places like Rosh Ha'ain. Before any work commences, the Israel Antiquities Authority conducts what it calls a salvage excavation.
We started to digging here, okay, and we didn't know what we were going to find. But after 3 months, we exposed pretty nice and large monastery.
The discovery of many impressive rural churches and monasteries in the area show that Christianity spread rapidly around the 5th century. Excavation director Amit Shadman says the Byzantine church is paved with a colorful mosaic. One of the most important finds is the Greek inscription at the entrance.
It's exactly the same like today, you know.
Yes.
People want to know that they gave the money, and you have to understand that it's very expensive to build a complex like this.
The inscription says, "This place was built under Theodosius the priest. Peace be with you when you come, peace be with you when you go. Amen." That's the ancient equivalent of a modern-day donor's plaque today. Up to 30 monks would have lived on the compound, and Shadman believes they were also farmers. The compound included living quarters, stables, and an olive oil press. He says those would not have been built without the help of the church.
The main things of this monastery, you know, is to take care of the rural area.
Archaeologists also uncovered an even older structure nearby, a 2,700-year-old farmhouse.
This area, from the beginning, was used for farming, okay, and for agriculture.
Sometimes archaeologists must move the antiquities, and they often rebury them. But this ancient Byzantine monastery and farmstead are slated to become part of a park.
I can tell you that this site, we're not going to destroy it, you know, and we will plan to keep it and leave it like a green area.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Rosh Ha'ain, Israel.
Thank you, Julie. You always find these incredible treasures in that land.
I bet we'll find some more.
I think so.
Not
Folks,
you and me, but...
No. Folks, that is it for this week's edition of Christian World News. Until next week.
Goodbye, and God bless you.